I really, really, really care. And I think that, this is the mandate I have. This is the focus I have, is helping the Jewish community to help themselves. I'm a facilitator. I cannot be there when an incident happens. Other professionals cannot be there. That's why we call 911. The difference between proactive and reactive, very, very simply, is, God forbid, is the difference between living or the opposite. And that it's as simple as that. You can have that in place. And no one's asking you to walk around in body armor and fatigued. You have to live your life. You have to get on with life. I remember dealing with the VIPs, or even with the schools. They want to get on with life. They don't want a school to be turned into a jail. They don't want to be sitting at home scared. You've got to get on with life. Hashem gives you life, and you have to enjoy it and make the most of it. At the same time, you have to have these precautions in place.
Hey, I'm Esther, and you are listening to On Your Own, the podcast for Jewish girls living away from home. Each week, we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you confidently navigate life on your own, so you can achieve real growth and independence and take ownership of this foundational stage of your life. For additional resources, tips, and to stay up to date on future episodes, sign up for the On Your Own newsletter, linked below in the description. Looking forward to spending some time with you today. And now, to this week's episode. What's your background and experience when it comes to safety and the Jewish community?
Great question, because I think everyone wants to know qualifications, and there's a lot of experts out there, or people who claim to be. I've been doing this a long time. I grew up in London, and I didn't grow up from. I was very lucky in the home that I was brought up in, very middle-class Jewish home. So I wasn't exposed to a lot. That much, but my parents had me introduced at an early age to martial arts, and there was no real connection because there was no real threat to me every day. I was kind of in this nice middle-class Jewish home bubble there, going to a school and everything else. And my father was a very, very proud Jew. We would, even though we weren't that from, we would go to shul every week, and I was always intrigued as to why, when he went to a shul, when we left, his yarmulke would go in his pocket. And it was very, very, very strange to me, even as a child. It's a little bit different than in the USA, in South Africa, Australia, and Britain and France and so on. For decades, and England even actually goes back to the 1930s, they have a history of having security volunteers from the community who are outside of a shul or a school. And as a kid, I always had an eye on that. I was always fascinated. What was the reason for this? And just looking at Jewish history and so on, I just really laser focused on that as a kid, and it just ended up being a career. So at the age of 17, I went to Israel for a year and a half. I did a gap year program. The last 3 months was an IDF Tiranut, like a basic training, and I came back and I got involved with a group in England, the Community Security Trust, which basically was the official body for the protection of the Jewish community. And I started off as a volunteer, and I got a little bit obsessed. And when you put in a lot of hard work and effort, and you usually get good results. So I got quite a good name, and it ended up leading to paid work as well. And there are other areas as well. You can look after shuls and schools and events on a volunteer basis, and the paid and so on. And there's management. And an area that I ended up, at least my career there, was looking after VIPs and their families.
As a bodyguard.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And that's a very, very specialized thing. It's not everyone. But I was very, very fortunate with that. I still have friends from working with to this day. One I actually just saw this past Sunday. And you just build a really, really strong bond. But you also build a very strong bond in a lot of cases with the VIP, with the principal and their families. So much so that generally without going into all these secrets, you can't spend too much time with them. So usually it's on a contract or for a very, very short period of time. And I ended up, my last major VIP that actually led me to becoming frum was former Chief Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, who had a huge impact on me. And I wouldn't be frum today, or I wouldn't have a frum family today without him and his guidance.
Wow. Wow. So how long were you doing this job as a bodyguard?
That's a good question, because there were so many other things I was doing at the same time within the realm of security. I would say probably about 6-7 years, and then I did some, I don't want to call them odd jobs, but some special work with him near the end. I think it ended in 1999, and then I ended up in yeshiva pretty close to that time too.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Before I get into the security questions, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks is like a big idol for a lot of people, including myself. And I was just wondering if there's one thing that you learned from him, being in such close contact, what would be like the biggest lesson that you learned from him?
Oh my gosh, that is a really good question. I will tell you two very, very clear areas. Just seeing him in private times, under stress, under emotions, under huge, today with the work I do, he actually pushed me to do the work. I run the security for Chabad Florida and for LEC, which is a very large school system in Miami. And the last time I saw him, I think it was in 2014. He was actually here speaking in Boca Raton, Florida. And he was here with his wife, Lady Sacks, sorry. And the level of commitment and work ethic, really, if you ask me two things instead of one, sorry to cheat.
Mm-hmm.
One I would say is to be a good Jew. And he really, really, really worked it. I've never seen anyone. He was beyond brilliant. There's no question. I've met a lot of very, very bright people. No one on his level. Just to be a good Jew. And the other is he really was a chassid. He was a chassid of the Rebbe. And whether you're Chabad or not, just to see that bond and how he blended it into other areas of his life is just very, very powerful. So for me, that pushes me. And I remember asking him, do I really want to work with Chabad? Do I want to work again with the Jewish community, which is a thankless task? Very, very challenging. You don't always get that much love, but that's not why you do it. So he absolutely, without reservation, without hesitation, said, you've got to do it. So.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so the reason why we're doing this now, and why I caught you at 5:30 in the morning, is that it's Chanuka, first of all, and there's a lot of fires being lit all around the world, Baruch Hashem, and for girls who are living on their own, they're lighting their own menorahs very often. And we also just had a situation, unfortunately, where there was a fire in a seminary here in Yerushalayim, which I know has affected a lot of us. I mean, the girls particularly, of course, and I know that the seminary is dealing with them very well. I've gotten in experts to work with them. But I think it's just become front of mind. And it's the kind of thing, fires, security, that we kind of think, oh, but that's never going to happen to me, until you kind of get a wake-up call that maybe it could. And then, okay, what do we do now? So I wanted to kind of just empower these girls and hear from you. What can we do? So I wanted to just start with, why do you think that this is an important topic to discuss and raise awareness about, this topic of security?
Well, you hit the nail on the head there, just saying that we don't think it's going to happen to us. And we don't. We want to go about our everyday lives. We're very, very busy, either with ourselves or our work or studies and so on, and just trying to live life to the very best that we can. And everyone has a responsibility for their own safety. Hashem wakes you up every day. You've got to pay rent, right? To him. You've got to do what you have to do. So whether you're a student, whether you're a child in school, when my kids were younger, I used to tell them, your job is to go to school and do the best job you can and try to be a really, really good student. So everyone has a role to play, and how much more so with the students who they're getting away from home, they're getting independence and freedom and everything else. So everyone has an achrayus, a responsibility for their own safety. I know anyone can know, God forbid, if you have to call 911, which is a positive thing because at least you have an outlet to get help. That period of time from an incident to calling 911, whatever your response, whatever tools you have, and I mean mental tools or physical tools, that can save your life and someone else's. So preparation, just know in my business is critical. You mentioned here in Miami it's 5:30 a.m. Or just after, and we really do try to start our days early just to prepare ahead of time, so that even now every single day I have the assumption that God forbid, with the buildings and people I have to protect, that something's going to happen today. Now, I'm a little bit different. I pay to do this. I pay to be paranoid, but in a very, very calm way, and I can speak about that afterwards. But it is critical because when it happens, it's a little bit of a slap in the face, and you've got to be proactive. Now, in America, security is a lot better. We always used to do a joke about this. If you look at the security in Israel or in other communities that are a little bit more advanced, Israeli-style security is a lot more proactive. You go to an airport in Israel, even before you get there, they know that you're coming. If you fly on El Al, which has been the only choice for a lot of people recently, there are a lot of systems in the place, and they haven't really changed a huge amount with those kinds of systems in the last 20, 30 years, because it works. It's basic. American security is a little bit more reactive. They're sitting there, they're just waiting. Something's going to happen. So you know what? Fine, I have a solution. God forbid there's a fire. God forbid there's a crazy guy outside. I'm going to call 911. That's not the best approach to have. It's the same thing with if there's a medical issue. Oh, where are the Band-Aids? Where's the AED? So the whole goal is to mitigate the damage that can be done, God forbid, during an incident, whatever it is, that you have the tools in place. No one's asking you to be a Navy SEAL or an EMT or anything like that. But Baruch Hashem, today, we have so many tools and the training you can have that doesn't take much time but can make a huge difference. And we really want to live our lives and everything else. But my goal and the goal of professionals out there is to encourage people to get at the training now. So if God forbid it does happen, and it might, we don't know how Hashem works, that you've got those skill sets there.
I want to hone in on why is it so important to be proactive? Because we have amazing people like you who are taking, there's this assumption that there's someone always going to be there for us. Why should I, as an individual or as a young girl, have to be being proactive when it comes to my safety if there are systems in place to protect us?
Having so I have 2 sons and 3 daughters, one who's married. So, obviously I think about my kids a lot. I treat every child in the school system that I work with today as one of my own. I don't know all the names. I don't know all the faces. It's very cute when I go into a store with my wife and there are these little kids waving. They're not in uniform. I have no clue who they are. My wife jokes that's the only time I'm a rock star, but I really, really, really care. And I think that, this is the mandate I have. This is the focus I have, is helping the Jewish community to help themselves. I'm a facilitator. I cannot be there when an incident happens. Other professionals cannot be there. That's why we call 911. We call in the cavalry and we want to get that help us there. The difference between proactive and reactive, very, very simply, is God forbid, and I have to use words that people don't like hearing, is the difference between living or the opposite. And that it's as simple as that. And that's why we've seen, Baruch Hashem in Israel, in the USA, huge efforts and funding put into Hatzalah, groups like this, relationships with law enforcement and everything else. We've seen even at the level of a president that security is never 100%, but the response can be 120%. you can have that in place. And no one's asked you to walk around in body armor and fatigues. You have to live your life. You have to get on with life. I remember dealing with the VIPs, or even with the schools. They want to get on with life. They don't want the school to be turned into a jail. They don't want to be sitting at home scared. You've got to get on with life. Hashem gives you life, and you have to enjoy it and make the most of it. At the same time, you have to have these precautions in place. There's an adage that the bad guy is training right now, is waking up at the same time as you. So it's just it's happenstance, it's a circumstance, it's divine providence going to be that God forbid you're going to encounter someone who's not. If you live in Brooklyn these days, it's gone beyond crazy. You can't walk down the street. So it's just common sense. It's the same common sense as if you're going to drive at night, you're going to turn on the lights, you're going to put on your belt, you're going to lock the doors, and you're going to get from A to B, and you'll do that safely with the seichel. It's the same with applying things that don't really happen every day. So proactive is just going to save lives a lot more than reactive.
Wow. So what would that look like for a young woman who's away from home? What does proactive look like for her?
I think you have to know yourself, and you have to know your environment. So if you were coming from home, especially if it's the first year, and Baruch Hashem, most families, being at home, you have your own shell, you're very, very comfortable, you know what's what, you have hopefully loving family around you, and a support system. When you go out to school, seminary, even traveling for the summer, I'm never a fan of the summers, by the way. Just, that's a time I was worried, because there's always some crazy story. And you try and think, what could have prevented this, and so on. But when you're going to a different environment, you're going to create your new environment. There's so many new things and the distractions, and you don't know. People can take advantage of you. You don't know different personalities. You have to know yourself, and you have to create and replicate the systems you have at home. And when I say systems, how would you deal with an emergency? If Baruch Hashem, you live in a family that has quite a few kids, we've been a few times, someone's had to go to the ER, or they've got a boo-boo, or you've encountered these things. Here you're going to an environment where you don't have that system there. So it's very important that you know your environment. And that's the people that you're dealing with, because it's generally people who can cause harm. Is the environment you are safe in? If you're in an apartment, if you're in a dorm, is it safe? Is there a working smoke alarm? Is there a carbon monoxide detector? Do you know where the exits are? Can you get out in the middle of the night if you can't see where it is? I used to get mad at my kids if the walkway or the doors out of the house were ever blocked with bags or shoes or sports stuff, however it was. I said, "Chas v'shalom, in the middle of the night, you're going to trip over that and everything else." So I sound like an old man, because I am, but
never thought of that.
No. So it's just common sense. It's little things like having a flashlight or access to it if the power goes out. Pepper spray if it's legal there. Just equip yourself. And I tell people all the time, and it doesn't matter what age you are. We used to train a lot of volunteers here in Florida, of different ages and different abilities. And one of the things was, do you know how to look after yourself? Meaning, if someone tries to attack you, do you know what the basics are? Where to strike, how to get out. You don't have to be paranoid like me. My wife always jokes. She knows that when we go to a restaurant, I'll always have my back to the door, seeing who's coming in and out. So it's a running joke. Now, you don't have to do that. I recommend you do, but you just have to have a seichel. And the other issue is, and Jonathan Sacks actually spoke about this, he actually got into a little bit of trouble. I think it was just before Steve Jobs from Apple passed away. And he talked about how everyone is I-centric. iPhone, iMac, I. And that was some great stuff there. But for me, what that meant is that people are so focused on themselves and on their phones. The phone is the best enemy that you have. Forget with time and the shtus and everything else. Yes, it's a great tool. You can learn Torah on it, and you can be in touch with their family. It's a beautiful thing. But when you're walking in the street, you become a victim immediately, because you have an iPhone, or whatever the phone of choice is.
Or because
and you're
people
just
want to
so
steal it?
it. Not even that. You're distracted. You're focused. Instead of when you walk, you're being aware of your surroundings, which is very important. They can tell straight away. That person is just drilled on their phone. They're clueless as to what's going on. So you instantly have created yourself into a victim status.
You make yourself an easy target.
Exactly.
You're distracted and you're not aware of your environment because you're on your phone.
And the whole goal is to not make yourself an easy target. Don't be the person of choice that someone might go after. Don't live in an environment where it's possible that a fire could go off in the middle of the night, chas v'shalom, and you don't even know. You're asleep. Why? Because the smoke detectors aren't working. You got to own it, and you cannot assume, well, is the battery working? What are we going to do if it goes off? One of the exercises that we actually did with volunteers, well, it's a very, very simple question. Here's a scenario. So for me, scenario training is the best. You just talk about a scenario and how would you react. And it's a very calm way of not being paranoid, but just saying for every action, there is a reaction. If you're driving and the car in front of you brakes hard, you want to be able to brake hard without going into the back of them. So you've got to keep that distance and just be aware of what's happening. So one of the scenarios is a very, very simple question. It's 3 a.m., you're fast asleep, and all of a sudden the smoke alarm goes off. Well, Baruch Hashem, it's going off, so you know it works.
That means it's working.
But what do you do from there? Now, if you're in a dorm, have you communicated to your friends? Some people that you might have a connection with, and these days, some people you might not really speak to, but how are you going to evacuate at that time? How are you not to panic? And it could be simple things like I have a flashlight. We know how to get out of here. And of course, someone's got to call 911. And it's talking these things out. Every family should do it. Every student should do it. It doesn't take a huge amount, and it's not going to drive you crazy with paranoia or fear, because we can't live in that way.
So just like you're saying, when you're driving, you're not going to stay so close to the car in front of you that if he brakes hard, you're going to go straight, and you're going to keep a distance and be proactive. We need to take those steps. We need to take those steps proactively before an incident to make sure that when it happens, we don't crash. We have things in place.
Absolutely. And Baruch Hashem, how lucky we are that we live in environments which aren't so crazy. I'm a little bit more paranoid. I always keep a distance between cars because that's what I was trained to do. So if I have to get away fast, I can. In South Africa years ago, I know that you couldn't stop at a traffic light because if you did, someone would rob you. So that's paranoia level. So Baruch Hashem that we live in environments in Israel, in America, where even with the current matzav, it's still, and that's the great thing about Israel. I have to tell you, I have a son who's going there to the army next week, and people are asking me, well, aren't you scared? And I'm not, absolutely not. Why? Because they've got the proactive response down. So if anything happens, it's dealt with very, very quickly. Especially after October the 7th. So that's about having systems in place and being proactive as well, and living there where you're aware of what's going on, but not to the point of going crazy with paranoia.
So what is that balance? Because I think that even if one girl would just chirp up now in her seminary, like, oh, what's going on with the smoke alarms? Like, we need to check that, or go to her like the person in charge and say, hey, like, are there smoke alarms? Are they working? A lot of people will look at that even and say, don't be so paranoid. Like, calm down. Why are you suddenly talking about this? But from what I'm hearing from you, that's like an essential first step. But like that's something that's very important. So how do we know when we're being paranoid and when we're like this is becoming anxiety and being fueled by unrealistic fear, or when this is actually a practical, essential even step that we need to take?
Such good questions here. So I would actually be a little bit tricky here. What I would do is I would just ask for a drill. I mean, I wouldn't talk to your peers about it. I just talk to the building manager, maybe get them a coffee or a donut. Say, listen, thank you so much for everything you do. It's great being here. Is there any way that we could just have a drill? Just what's it going to look like if, God forbid, the alarm code goes off? And God willing, that the alarm is actually going to go off because it's working. Now, I know that equipment you got to check and check and check and check because when things happen, a lot of the time stuff goes wrong. Communications, calling 911, there's always, everyone panics, even in the EMT panics. But what takes over is there are training. If you have blood flowing in your veins, you have that's a natural human response. Bless you. So that's really whatever training you have or whatever training you don't have, that's what you're going to be dealing with at that time. It's a tool. So I would definitely be a little bit smart about it and say, look, here's a donut, here's a gift card, thank you so much. The building manager you're going to need anyway throughout the year, right? Like, can you change this for us? Can you do that? So I think that's a good thing to do.
For him to do a drill, what does that mean? For him to set off the smoke alarm to see what happens?
Yeah.
Or to plan it in advance? Or just ask him, can you just set it off so we can see what happens?
Well, I'd say, let's say that you're in a dorm and it's got 20, 30 rooms and it's on different floors. So you have a lot of rooms that have to get out to the exit. So where is your closest exit? So if you ever go to a hotel in the States, by law, I think in Europe as well, on the back of the door, they have to have an emergency route, which with arrows highlights where you exit from. So that when you get in the room, common sense is they put it there, whether you read it or not. Most people don't. I'm a little bit crazy.
Right, I never even noticed it.
Okay, well, so I'm always looking for exits. But anyway, so but I just want to know if, God forbid, it goes off, how am I getting out of here? So if there's asking the super or the building manager or whoever it is, the dorm counselor, even easier to I don't want to say bribe, but you know,
buy a coffee.
Of course, yeah. Or you could give them a gift card and just keep on adding to it. But so what you would do is really say what happens if. Now don't go into a whole bunch of scenarios because fire is the easiest. It's relevant now, obviously, with what happened last week, but it is a reality. You're asleep and you're not fully aware what's happening. What's in place if this goes off? And then how does this look? How do we evacuate? Where do we go? What do we take with us? Most people in the middle of the night, if something goes off, they're totally clueless. And I get that, but it's a conversation to have, and just then at least when you see what's failed there, that we don't have maps in the room, or we don't have a clear direction, or there are obstructions on the way out. Once everyone knows what to do, let's say there's 40 girls there. That can actually help save lives, because if someone is still fast asleep, I know when I was in yeshiva in Morristown, very sadly the fire alarm would go off very, very often. I think some people used to play with it, and the fire department never loved us. Many times at about 1 a.m. until 3:30, they would have us out in the freezing cold as a punishment. But they had very, very clear systems down as to where to evacuate, where to go, and so on. But in the middle of the night, there was some Bokram who just wouldn't wake up because it's just a drill, it's just a fire alarm again. So if you have to get a friend, at least you know in your mind you're not disoriented, even though it's in the middle of the night, you're tired, however it is, to get that friend out. So everyone has a group responsibility for each other, but everyone needs to be told and advised. And everyone's different. I mean, in the way that they respond and the way they react, but you literally can save lives by just having a system in place. And not everyone's going to listen, and not everyone is going to follow. But if it's there, that's a very good start for a conversation and ongoing training.
So what I'm hearing is that you don't have to necessarily even be waiting for your institution to take that initiative for you to be able to take some initiatives for yourself and to get that, get to know where your exits are, make sure that there's a smoke alarm in your vicinity where you are, and also maybe even discussing with a roommate, like, hey, if this happens and I'm sleeping, wake me up, I'll wake you up. Like kind of basic conversations like that we can do without starting to, without it feeling too daunting, that we have to change the entire institutional system.
And also that, when you come into a new environment, new friends, you've just come from home, let's say it's your first year, you don't want to look like a lunatic. And I get that. So, this girl's crazy. No, but start with yourself. Like, start okay, I'm in a new environment. How would I get out of here? And this also applies to if you're in an environment where it's more prevalent in the States, although these things do happen in Israel, but also with active shooting as well. I go to a class every day. I'm going to an environment every day. Without delving into that area as well, but just thinking, I'm here every day. I know this environment, but how well do I really know it? So you yourself can find a ladder, or how it is. Check the smoke alarm yourself. Check the exits. I know many sites, even though they're pretty rigid with inspections, where the exit lights have been working properly. So 50% of your day is night. So how are you going to see what's happening? Do you have a flashlight?
A flashlight. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what about Chanuka? The fact that we're lighting menorahs. What should we be aware of?
You treat the menorah like a child. You don't leave it alone, or you have eyes on it. I actually had a talk with someone who actually put one of their house cameras on the menorah, so they would leave it. A little bit paranoid, but within reason. I think about 7 years ago they had a small fire, not to do with a menorah. So really, again, it's just using. If you tell a non-Jewish person, I'm leaving open flames out unsupervised, they're going to think you're crazy. So if it's possible, I know for me it's not. I wish I could sit there for the entire candles and just have a meal and chat with the family, but it just doesn't happen. So first of all, the environment that it's in. If the candles are going to fall on the ground, what are they going to hit? Is there foil? Is there a protective barrier around it? Is someone going to check on it? Are you going to light and then go out? I went out with my wife last night and we just no kids were in the house, so I said we're going to light when we get home. So
so we don't leave the menorah alone.
Correct. Yeah.
And what are things? What are better surfaces? You mentioned foil. What are things we should avoid having near the menorah, or things that are good to have around to prevent maybe a fire, God forbid, spreading?
So you've got to think, is there a carpet? Is it near a curtain? Is it near anything that's flammable? What if it falls onto foil, then it's good like that. I know that in a lot of yeshivas, they have them on the stainless steel counters and so on. So that will really, really help. So if the flame does drop, where's it going to go? You can mitigate that by having someone just, can you go and check on them? Because nothing is infallible in putting it out. But at least that if a candle does fall, that it's not going to fall against something that's going to accelerate fire. But,
Okay, that's very helpful. And I saw you mentioned earlier before we started speaking, saw you mention fire extinguisher, knowing how to use a fire extinguisher. And when you said that, I was like, first of all, I have no idea how to use a fire extinguisher. I don't even know what it is. I was like, is there water inside? Like, is it a special thing? So I was like, even for myself, I'd like to know, like, what's the deal with fire extinguishers? Do we need to have them in every environment or in only specific ones? And what are they and how do they work?
So that if you're in a dorm or if you're renting an apartment, sometimes, I don't know all the laws in Israel, but I know that generally they have them, and if they don't, I actually use that as a mashal, an extinguisher, for Jews if they're going to ever use a weapon, which is a big thing in the States, of course, but also in Israel. It's like an extinguisher. Do you know where it is? Do you know how it works? Can you use it under stress? And is it full? So that you could buy these online in the States on Amazon. don't know about the easy access in Israel, but there are different kinds of extinguishers. You can get what's called a household version, which would just deal with. I'm no fire expert, but those would deal. I mean, I have one in my car just for work, of course, but just to have them within easy access. And the crazy thing is, we accrue so much stuff these days. Baruch Hashem, how lucky we are with things like Amazon and all these stuff that we accrue. But if something goes off, do you know where the extinguisher is and how fast can you get to it? And do your colleagues, your friends, your peers, do they know how to use it as well? And that can help mitigate something. Of course, there are times where you just have to evacuate and so on. But if you can put out something small, that's going to help. But the whole point is to attempt to deal with it. And if you can't, then you call the fire department.
You call the fire department. What is inside an extinguisher? Is it just water?
There's a powder resin that's used that suppresses the fire itself, and that is general. There's foam as well, which is there are other types you should use for vehicles, but the household version is. I know when I was a child, I was being naughty. I was playing with some cotton and matches in my room, and my father saw that I was walking to the kitchen trying to get cups of water, and I was going back and forth very, very quickly, so he couldn't work out. That was the beginning and the end of my career as a firefighter, but it didn't work out so well. So he bought in an extinguisher and just, I don't forget that tale for many, many reasons, but the household version should do the job, but that's obviously if it's at an early stage. So you don't need any
stage of the fire.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So you can just arrange to have one. And when you say know how to use it, do we have to practice using it, or just like read the instructions so we have read the like?
It's generally pulling a pin. Well, first of all, it's again something that you should check, just like you should check a smoke alarm and the batteries on your flashlight. Look how many times a day we check the battery level on our phones. That is abnormal to me. That's like a little bit crazy. So I think we could do a little bit with a smoke alarm and so on. Check the level. There's a gauge usually on there that will show you if it's active, usually green, so that you know it's full. And it's very, very simple. There are instructions. It's just you are pulling a pin. You clasp a handle together. Obviously, each one's different, so just check on this specific one you have, and just point and put out the fire as much as you can.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely going to get one now for my house because I don't have one, so that's helpful. I'm wondering, have you, in your line of work, seen firsthand the advantage of being proactive when you get to a scene and you see that someone has been proactive and how that changes things? Have you been able to see that yourself?
I see it every day, Baruch Hashem. And I see it because there are so many incidences that can happen that don't because of deterrence. In security, we talk about, and I think this can be applied for every day. We talk about the 4Ds. It's very early, so I'm going to try and get this right, even though I've said it 8,000 times. But we try to deter, we try to detect, we try to delay, and then we try to defend. So when we deter, deterrence is maybe there's a Ring camera on your door, or there's a locked door. People who are trying to rob into cars, they'll keep on trying multiple cars till they find a car that is open, and they'll go through that car, and that car will be the victim. I had a neighbor years ago who had a very bad habit of leaving their key fob in their fancy minivan. And one day, I came out and I could tell that something was wrong. It's called a baseline. I'll go into that in a second. Something was a little bit off. And I realized I'm leaving early and your van's always here. Why is your van not here? So maybe they went to the airport, however it is. Lo and behold, someone in the night had gone through each car just trying the car doors, and they got their door and they were just going to rifle through the car and just see what they could take. And lo and behold,
They found the key.
What a beautiful gift. So that
Oh.
that van only got found so fast because of how many Jewish magnets and the stickers it had on it, and it was like dumped on the side of the road, so it was easy to identify. But that didn't really help. But so that's also helping with being proactive, because you're just not doing something that's silly. You don't leave a door unlocked. You know, if I'm going to rob a house, there are 3 houses on the street. The house that is not well lit, the house that doesn't look like it's occupied, the house that there are little tricks you can do. I don't want to be the house of choice. The same thing with the shul. I don't want this shul to be the shul. I don't want any shul, obviously, but this shul that I'm protecting is not going to be an easy target. I'm not going to be an easy target when I'm going to the grocery store.
By
so
going
it's
on your phone, etc.
correct. So that's being proactive, and don't make yourself a victim. Don't make yourself easy pickings. And people do it every day. And yes, sometimes you're going to deal with someone who might be on drugs or however it is, mental health issues, and they're going to do whatever they're going to do. But generally, just don't be an easy target. Don't be an easy target for scams or put yourself. And you know what? I'll be honest with you. I think that females have a more intuitive sense of if something is off than guys do. So that's an advantage. And I know that's a generality, but it happens a lot more to guys who also just not aware of what's happening there. But being proactive literally does save lives. And yes, I do see it every day, because a lot of things. The head of Chabad in Florida, Rabbi Korf, who's my boss, we always joke that if security is if nothing's happening, then security is doing nothing. Meaning, it appears the appearance of, but there's a protective barrier around there, and there are things that do happen that we try to prevent. You can't prevent everything, and again, you will not, just like we've seen with world leaders, presidents, and so on. Security is not 100%. We saw this in Israel as well. It was shocking, beyond, and we still haven't gone through what happened and everything else. But the whole reality is that your response can be 120%. You can have those skills there and just say, I know what I'm going to do in this circumstance. And you don't have to be a paranoid person. It can be overwhelming in the beginning. When I especially started in security, going from general work to bodyguarding, you're here, you're looking after someone and their family, you're in the public realm. Sometimes there's a media there, and you could literally have a headache with every movement just going crazy. So you just create this, I don't even know how to say it. It's just, I'm living everyday life. I'm doing what I've got to do. I can be hyper vigilant, but not at the point of, I have to go to the ER because I'm panicking. It just becomes an awareness, and you can still go about your day and do everything that you need to do, because that is the ikka. That is the main thing. You can't just stay at home and not go out and live a life. So being proactive just means I'm prepared. I've thought these things through before, and you don't have a solution for every scenario, but
don't make yourself, as you said, like an easy target, and be prepared for situations as much as you can in advance, because that will have a better outcome. So you said deter, detect, delay, and defend. Do you want to go into all 4 of them? Or, because you mentioned the deter, don't leave your door unlocked and make yourself an easy target being on your phone. Basic things like that make your house look like it's occupied even if you're not there. What would detect be?
So on the deter happens even when you're asleep. Deter happens even when you're not even aware of what's happening. So when you're engaging with other human beings, or with elements that could start a fire, or walking from shul, a lot of the time you don't know what's going on. But the detection, that next level there, is it, again, you're not engaged in your phone. You're aware of your environment there. You create what's called a baseline. I always used to joke, what's a baseline? If I would come into my house years ago when my kids were younger, although even now they're teens, it's still a mess. But if the house was really, really tidy, I would know that something is off, something is wrong. So either the cleaner has showed up, or maybe someone's come in the house. And so, you could open up your car door, or you could open up your purse, and something's just off. It's missing, or so for a second you'll think it's you. That's a baseline. What is normal and what isn't normal? When you engage with the people, let's say you're in a dorm and you're meeting people for the first time. Now, obviously, people are different socially. There are amazing people, different personalities. You have a baseline. You have a prejudice of what is normal and what isn't. That's your standard in your brain, what you've grown up with, the environment you're in, and so on. Obviously, as you get older and you get out of the house and you're dealing with new people, you'll meet some really, really cooler people who years ago you would have thought were totally crazy, or that's growing. So the detection is that something is off. The detection is that guy over there that I just saw over there, or that there's something that here that if I can clock it, but is this going to create something that I'm not going to be comfortable with, or is this going to get me into a trouble? Is this person trouble as well? So that is the detection part. So the deterrence can happen. You can have a security guard or a police officer even sitting in their car on their phones outside of a shul, however it is. That's a deterrence. The bad guy's driving past. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to deal with that. You can go past the house that is well lit, has signs about an alarm, has ring cameras. It looks active. They're like, I'm not going to break into this house. You could see a young student. She's walking down the street. She's not on her phone. She's aware of her surroundings. She's looking around, not paranoid, but she's engaged with her environment, not with her phone. That helps with the detection process there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so detect is to notice if anything's off from baseline, so that you can establish whether you're in a safe environment or something that seems off, that needs to be dealt with in whatever way. Okay. Exactly. Okay, great. What is delay?
Delay is that, God forbid, something is about to happen. So let's say that a fire goes off. So how are you going to delay that? Well, you have an extinguisher. You're going to help preserve human life and your own life as well by getting to the exit. You're going to summon 911, medical help, fire. You're delaying the full extent of what that circumstance could create. Burning down the dorms, chas v'shalom. Someone's having a medical issue. You're going to delay what happens if they're not treated. God forbid, like where would that end up? If God forbid there's an active shooting, that you lock yourself down, or you get to cover, and that you warn other people as well. So that's delaying the progress of an attacker, or the progress of a medical issue, or the progress of a fire, so that it can't fulfill its full mission or extent.
Mm-hmm. So that would be something like having a fire detector, or maybe learning CPR so that can be administered in the moment, etc. So delay the what would have happened if you hadn't been there, kind of thing, if it had just run its full force.
Well, let's say you're going out with friends to, they're great Jewish restaurants, right? Mm-hmm. You're sitting there, you're eating, and one of your friends has a medical issue, or the person behind starts to choke. You know what? I didn't do that CPR course. I didn't, I couldn't be bothered. Well, you're not going to help in that process to delay. You now, of course, common sense is you're going to call 911, Hatzalah, whoever it is. They're going to come and help out. But if you don't have those skills there, just like, if you're on the subway in New York, which is a great environment, and someone's up in your face, how are you going to delay them punching you in the face? Like, do you understand about distance, and which is a very important thing. So how can you create? You're going to go into an environment that you're not sure how it's going to work out. How can you maintain as much control as is possible in that emergency, in that crisis? Or how can you have something that might be a little bit of a drama not turn into a crisis for you or for your friends? It's a mitigation.
Wow. I never thought about that. I'm going to stop pushing off the CPR course, which I've been doing for a long time. Thanks for the push.
Save a life.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. Now, listen, I have little kids, Baruch Hashem, at home, and it's definitely, I know my husband knows, but he's not always home, and I shouldn't rely on that. So that's definitely a big one. What about defend?
Defend. So defend, really is that you got to the point where the deterrence hasn't worked. The detection might have worked, but things have moved so quickly that you've detected there's a fire, that there's a bad person there, that there's a medical issue. You're trying to delay the damage that emergency, that circumstance can occur. And if you have to defend, defense isn't just a physical act against someone who's trying to hurt you, but I'm defending lives as well by extraction. I'm taking people out of the environment where there's a fire. I'm helping encouraging people to lock down in a room if there's a shooting. If there's a physical attack on you as well, and you've exhausted these 4 steps. You're at a point where it's you and someone else, and they want to do harm to you or other people that you love. You need to, sorry to use a bad word, but you have to fight like hell. You have to turn around that circumstance. It's got to this point now. In security, if God forbid we ever have to use weapons or physical interactions, particularly with AVI people, just in the general, I was always trained. You failed. All your other systems in place, all your being proactive has just failed here. So that really. So the whole question is, okay, so I have a crazy person on the subway in New York. How am I going to deal with this person? Do I know about distance? Do I understand the physiology when someone's about to strike? Do I know how to block that? Now, we don't like to talk about these things because we just want to call the cops and have them deal with the crazy person, right?
Right.
Just like we're never going to deal with a fire, we're never going to deal with a medical issue, we're never going to deal with a crisis. Well, Hashem doesn't work that way. So he's a loving father, and but sometimes, like all parents, we don't understand what they do or why they do it. But there's a reason. So do you really know the basics? And I'll be honest with you, there's not a huge amount of moves that you need to learn to defend yourself and show someone, I'm turning this situation around. You feel you have control of me and my circumstances right now, and I'm going to turn this around. And that also is the protection of your life as well. If you have to do that, if you're in an environment where you can't, I love people. We have this in the States. It's a terrible thing where people get firearms. It's a big thing, and they think, I have security now. I'm protected. I know how to handle myself. Well, the boxer Mike Tyson has a great saying. Everyone has a plan until they're punched in the face. So when I'm hiring guys for security, I can usually tell if a guy's been punched in the face or not. I don't have a pretty face, but I have the face that people have wanted to punch. It's been punched. So I get that. But the reality is, what if someone does want to punch you in the face? How are you going to deal with that? And it's not something that we're comfortable with dealing with, but I'd rather you be proactive and think about it ahead of time. There's Krav classes, jiu-jitsu. Just learn these basic things that you can literally save your life. Don't be a victim and don't be a statistic, because I'm never going to deal with a fire. I'm never going to deal with a medical issue. I'm not, I'm just going to get on my phone and I'm going to call for help. Well, that's a very, very long time. When there's an incident, it's not seconds. It feels like, a very, very long time indeed. So.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I hear that you're very passionate about this. It's really, yes. And that's obviously from having seen these things firsthand and knowing that this is not just something that doesn't happen to me, which, as we started off with, is kind of how we like to walk around thinking about these things. And I really think that this is going to be very, very helpful for a lot of girls. It's the kind of thing that I never even thought of in the years that I was on my own, and technically I'm still on my own. Like, I don't, we're all on our own when it comes to these things in those circumstances. So to be able to take those steps to be proactive so that we can come out in the best way. I have one more question, which is that you mentioned when you were 17, I end off all my interviews with this question, that you left home, you went to Eretz Yisrael. If you could share one piece of advice with yourself, that version of yourself who had just left home for the first time, what would you share with yourself?
Oh, these questions are so good. So this is like a therapy session now. We might be going on for a lot longer than you planned. So I see this with my kids. I'm sending my son to Israel next week. Well, he wants to go. Obviously, it's a little bit bittersweet. I'm happy for him because he's at an age where it'll be great for him. He's very into martial arts and fitness. He loves Israel, and that's a beautiful thing. So as a parent, it's a little bit bittersweet, but that's me being selfish. It's such a difficult thing because, and I've been thinking about this a lot, because he's going to go through what I went through as well. It's a new environment. He's excited. He's giddy. New opportunities, and he's in an environment where he's just getting away from home. And as wonderful as home is, and as comfortable as he is here, and he loves eating from our fridge and everything else, and life's good here in America, and life's great in Israel. There's no question. I think you just have to try to be true to yourself, which is very difficult because you're going to go through a lot of changes as well. So you might not even know who you are when you go there. That might be the beginning of a journey of the discovery of who you are, what you like. You might come out a very different person after a few years of being in Israel. But at that age, I don't have regrets in the things that I've been very, very fortunate in people I've worked for, places that I've worked at. Obviously, with human interactions, there might be some regrets there. But I think that I'll be proud if I go forward to go backwards to answer your question. For me, God willing, I live till 120. I'm happy that, I'll get put in the ground and I've achieved what I need to achieve. I have physical scars. I have emotional scars. I have spiritual scars. I want to have done as much as I possibly can. I've lived life, not stupidly. Have I done some silly things? Yes. But it's so difficult. You just got to be true to yourself. I think you have to go with gut feeling. I think what I want for my kids is what you should want for yourself if you're going there. Be a mensch. That's it. The frumkeit is important. There's no question. And that's an important thing. And for many, many people, this is the ikar, and it's a challenge at that age because you want to be your own person as well. You don't want to live all the choices from your home and your family. But what I would say is, just be a mensch. If you have that as a baseline, to use that term again, I don't think you can go wrong. And in circumstances where you're under stress or you're having negative interactions with other human beings or making life choices, just ask yourself, am I going to end up looking like a mensch or not? Am I doing the right thing? It's a cliche, but that's what Jews have to do. We have to do the right thing, and it's not always easy, but that's what we need to do.
Wow. L'chaim. Thank you very, very much. That was great. I hope your son listens to this. No, I'm kidding.
Like any kid, he won't listen. No, he will.
Because this is great advice. Thank you very, very much. Thanks for last minute taking this time. I'm really, really grateful and excited to share this with you. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of On Your Own. If you like this episode or think it will be useful to someone else, please leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. I would love to connect with you. If you've got any questions, feedback, or ideas for future episodes, you can email me at onyourownpodcast@gmail.com. See you next week, and in the meantime, happy adulting.